it makes you feel good to cosplay as revolutionaries, knock yourself out, burn yourself out. Just don't drag Gaza into it. Also, throwing stuff on paintings is just stupid.
Bill Maher recently torched the woke mob for their blatant hatred of America while shamelessly pushing their own selfish agendas. He called out how the woke crowd never misses a chance to bash the country, yet never have the guts to leave it. Maher exposed their hypocrisy.
People who block traffic in the name of a cause, no one likes you. And you're probably hurting your cause. In case you haven't seen what's going on lately, activists for ending the war in Gaza have taken to gathering on roads and bridges and stopping commuters from crossing. It happened last week in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle. They also blocked traffic here on the 405, but
Maher kicked things off by unloading on the woke mob who somehow think they have the moral high ground to block roads just because others don't share their views. Seriously, how absurd is that? Random activists deciding they can hold entire cities hostage simply because the world won't bend to their opinions. Maher pointed out how broken that logic is, especially when the causes they're screaming about often have little or nothing to do with America in the first place. And even if the US were involved, why should hard-working commuters, parents rushing to pick up their kids, employees heading to work, and students trying to get to class be punished for decisions made by politicians in Washington? It's cowardly. It's hypocritical. It's pure political theater. Maher tore into that hypocrisy with his trademark raw, unapologetic humor that slices straight through the nonsense, and the audience knew he was absolutely right.
Notice was this, that you have to be pretty dumb to think that the way to bring people around to your point of view is to make them late to pick up their kids from daycare. And that's what most normies are thinking. I have a kid. I have a job, and yes, I'm sure there are injustices on both sides in the Middle East, as there are injustices all over the world, but I'm going to be late for work, something you protesters on the bridge seem to have the luxury of not having to worry about, which seems kind of privilegey.
Maher then dropped a brutal truth bomb, one the woke mob refuses to face. Ordinary Americans are far more concerned with keeping their own lives together than with whatever global cause happens to be trending online. And it's not because they don't care about the world, it's because they're busy working, paying bills, raising kids, and doing everything they can just to stay afloat. Their biggest worry isn't organizing a protest, it's making sure there's gas in the tank and food on the table. That's why the absurdity of these protests is so glaring. The same roads these activists block are the ones everyday people rely on to get to work, school, or a doctor's appointment. Maher's point hit hard. Regular Americans don't have time for performative virtue signaling. Punishing them for simply trying to live their lives isn't activism. It's pure arrogance.
Your hands to the street, because your hands don't have to do any work today. I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them it seems like it's more about the warrioring than about whatever the cause is. If you really cared about apartheid so much, which Israel does not actually practice, Arabs there vote, they serve in parliament, they sit on the judiciary, wouldn't you start with this? With the hundreds of millions of women in the world who live under a true apartheid, a gender apartheid of the most brutal kind? I'll wait.
Maher pulled no punches when he called out the glaring hypocrisy behind these so-called protests for the freedom of Gaza. Because let's be honest, it's rarely about the cause itself. It's about optics, clout, and the self-righteous thrill of being seen as a justice warrior. Maher made it clear, if these activists truly cared about human rights, they'd be speaking out about the horrific oppression women face across many Arab nations. Where restrictions aren't symbolic, they're suffocating. Women are stripped of basic freedoms, silenced, and punished simply for speaking their minds. Yet from the same people clogging up American streets. Crickets. Not a whisper. Even worse, Maher noted, countless celebrities, influencers, and athletes happily travel to those very countries. Smiling for cameras, cashing massive paychecks, all while ignoring the suffering they claim to oppose. His point was razor-sharp. What's driving these protests isn't moral conviction. It's performative outrage masquerading as principle.
Speaking truth to power, or do you just think you look cool in a cafe? which is really just the new Che Guevara t-shirt. Another historical figure you never researched and so think is a hero, but was actually a sadistic, racist monster fighting for communism, the worst form of government ever. But these are small matters. When
Bill made another razor-sharp observation. The so-called woke warriors love to rally around slogans, faces, and fashionable causes, yet rarely have a clue what any of it actually means. For them, it's not about substance, it's about style. It's about looking woke on Instagram, waving a flag they can't explain, or wearing a t-shirt with a symbol they've never bothered to understand. The irony, Maher pointed out, is that many of these same symbols and figures they glorify are tied to dark, violent, or deeply corrupt histories, legacies of oppression and exploitation. But none of that matters to the woke crowd. What matters is the image, the aesthetic, the quick dopamine hit that comes from virtue signaling without knowledge or context. Maher skewered this perfectly. Activism without understanding isn't justice, it's cosplay. And when ignorance is dressed up as righteousness, it's not moral courage. It's just another empty performance.
Look at me. Watch me. And if you like the way I'm fighting injustice, remember to like and subscribe.
Maher was absolutely right. At their core, so many of these so-called activists aren't driven by conviction, they're driven by narcissism, attention, and the promise of social media fame. It's hard to understand why anyone would rally behind a slogan, symbol, or figure they clearly know nothing about. Because this isn't about principle, it's about performance. They're not fighting for justice, they're fishing for followers, likes, and engagement. Every protest becomes a backdrop for a selfie. Every march turns into content for a woke video clip designed to rack up views. It's not sacrifice, it's branding. The cause is an accessory, the spotlight the real prize. Maher tore straight through that facade, exposing what's really going on. This isn't activism, it's performance art for clout. In the end, it's not about change, it's about clicks, attention, and cash.
That confused man even lit himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy, and in his last Facebook post he said, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery?" Interesting cocktail question, sir, and I guess the right answer is kill myself. But it wouldn't have actually fixed the problem if General Ulysses S. Grant had immolated himself and his last words were, "Hey Lincoln, are you using that law?"
Here, Maher shined a spotlight on the sheer absurdity of the woke mob's favorite stunts, acts that might look dramatic or even noble on camera but, in reality, accomplish absolutely nothing. We've all seen the theatrics, self-immolation, flag burnings, effigies set on fire, all carefully staged to shock, outrage, and go viral online. But once the smoke clears, what's actually changed? Nothing. The world stays the same. Policies don't budge. And the very people they claim to defend are no closer to freedom or justice. Maher cut through the spectacle with brutal clarity. If these activists were truly serious about creating real change, they'd put down the matches and start focusing on meaningful action, hard work, strategy, and real-world solutions. Because real change doesn't come from staged outrage or viral pyrotechnics. It comes from discipline, persistence, and purpose. Anything less isn't progress, it's just theater for the cameras.